integrate faster. Yes, let's record. That works better this way. So I'm going to share my screen right away. And if you have any questions, again, please let me know in the chat. I will speak. I will give you a lot of information tonight. Uh, it's going to be simple. It's going to be useful, hopefully, but it's going to be, very practical information. So if you guys at any point have a question saying, oh, I don't know how to use that, or that's useful, but how can I apply it? Just let me know, and I'll be happy to help you with this. So first of all, can everybody see my screen? Yes, okay, wonderful. So welcome to Canada. Lots of things that we need to discuss today. To start, just to let you know, we're going to go with a brief introduction of Canada. I know this might seem a little bit outside of the box, but I think it's necessary that we just make sure everybody is on the same line. After that, we're going to see the core differences, what's happening also in a Canadian workplace, the employer's expectations, and we can also see conversation codes, the infamous or famous, depending how you want to see it. And it's the small talk, obviously. And we're going to also have unspoken rules and taboos. Be careful with those. And finally, good habits and some tips, tricks, and tools for you to feel better, to feel more comfortable and in control of your new adventure here in Canada. So let's dive in a little bit of history and make sure that your microphone is actually on mute, just for the comfort and the experience of everybody here. So what is Canada? Canada is a constitutional monarchy in a federal parliamentary system. As you can see, even after 15 years practicing my English in Canada, I can barely pronounce that sentence. What is it exactly? It just means that right now we have a king, the King of Canada, which is Charles III. Legally speaking, different from Charles, King of Great Britain. Just know that. And the system, the political system that we have here in Canada is kind of similar to the US, except that we don't have states. We have provinces and territories. The provinces are quite autonomous when it comes to the different policies they have for sometimes immigration, for education, and also the way they decide to build here, and health as well. Territories are a little bit different in the sense that we have way less people living in there, so their autonomy is also different. Canada might be the second largest country in the world. It still have roughly the same population as Spain, which is fairly small, especially compared to our neighbors, the US. It's a country that has a rich past. We had people in Canada for more than 25,000 years in Canada, so that's a lot. But the modern history really starts 500 years ago with the French and the British deciding to colonize the country. As you might know, this hasn't turned out really well for some communities, and it's important to understand that this is part of also the evolution of the country right now. There's been a lot of movements in order to better integrate each and everyone, including the First Nations, the Autochthon, in this new Canadian society. So there's a lot for us to unpack here, and we'll discuss it right after. The final thing here that is important to know is the fact that there's a rivalry both inside and outside Canada. Let me explain. In Canada, we're going to have mostly the Anglophones, and then we have, you guessed it, Quebec. So what we need to, I see Joel smiling, yeah. What we need to understand here that we have Anglophones, Quebec, but we also have Francophones. So we have to make sure that we identify each and every one, because culturally here, you'll see, you're going to feel there's a difference. The other thing also, this rivalry extends to our neighbor, the US. The US, you'll see, they're very proud to be American, especially in the last 24 hours. We can see that with all the political shamble over there. But the difference with Canada, and we'll see that Canada perceives itself differently. Canadians perceive themselves not primarily as Canadians, but as people with a history, with a different culture. They're coming from somewhere and also they're Canadian. And the difference with the Americans that Americans will say, I'm American and I come from Italy initially, or my family comes from Italy. This might be a very small change here, but you'll see after that in our conversations, this has an impact. Okay, done with the history. Let's go with the core differences. When you arrive to Canada, or even before arriving in Canada, you had a certain perception and a certain understanding of what is a Canadian person. You might say French people might be arrogant and always smoking and romantic and whatever, or you might have a very, very negative view on French people. And usually Canadian all around the globe are perceived quite positively. So they can be perceived as polite, respectful, sometimes even warm and welcoming, attentive, patient, and also they always look for the compromise. So they're consensus oriented. And you have to understand, and we'll see that throughout this presentation, everything you perceive and you think is right or wrong is mostly a cultural perception. As a French person, as a Canadian person, I will perceive things differently. The exact same thing will be seen either positively or negatively. I'll give you some examples right after. So if we remove this cultural perception, what do we see actually in the core there? The reality, the substance is in Canada, confrontation is perceived as rude. So any kind of confrontation is not acceptable in the society. You have to demonstrate what Canadians perceive as respect. And you have also to understand that there's certain social conventions that you also need to enforce on yourself. So what this means, well, you'll see it right away. Canadians tend to greet you with a big smile and say, "Hi, how are you?" If you go to Paris, if you visit Paris, actually, you'll see Parisians they're not like that. So I'm quoting a lot French people, but of course, if you come from somewhere else, please let us know. Share also in the chat if you want. That's always good. But for Canadians, it's very important to create an atmosphere where you feel welcome to interact. And this comes with a smile. This comes with asking, how are you? How do you feel? Of course, here, the social conventions is that we need a short exchange. You don't need to share your whole life with that person. It's just to show you that they're polite and they want you to understand that everything is fine and they're comfortable with you. So some people in some culture looking at this behavior, we might think, oh, that's a little bit hypocrite from them because they're always smiling, but they never tell you what they actually think. Be careful with that. This is a cultural perception. If in Asia, especially in Japan, Korea, people will greet you usually almost the same way. They're going to be very polite, a little bit more formal. And in France, we're going to be much more colder. Also in Eastern Europe, people are going to be much less smiley, that's for sure, but it doesn't mean that they're not nice to you or they're impolite, quite the opposite. So we have to observe. And that's one of the first thing I've learned coming here in Canada. I cannot behave the same way I used to do it in my home country. I first have to observe how people interact with me, and I have to mimic this behavior because it's not about thinking either it's right or wrong, it's understanding how people communicate. Then, one of the things that is very important here, and that relates to the very first slide I was talking about, is the principle that in Canada, each community is different from another one. And so if you're Indian and you arrive in Canada, you're most likely to end up in the Indian community. Same for a Chinese person, same for a Spanish one, somebody from Congo. It's very different, for example, from some other countries like France or to some extent UK, where everybody is supposed to be French first. Even if you just arrived, you have to behave like a French person. And that's it. We don't recognize community over there. Rather, in Canada, we think that it's important that each community feels safe to express themselves and their culture. And this will bring also additional economical opportunities for the country. So beware of this, because this will trigger something that you might not be comfortable with yet. It's the fact that when you go to work, you're going to work with people from many different communities, and it's going to be fine. But the thing is, if you're looking to make friends at work, it might be a little bit more difficult than you think, because most people will work with anyone, anybody from any community. But when it's time to go back home, they will go back in their community, and they're going to spend time with their community. So their friends are going to be there, and their colleagues at work. So there's a difference here that is subtle, but is very important to understand. If you want to make friends, it's most likely going to happen in your community or outside of work. Miracles exist. Don't worry, it happens. Then in Canada, we have the post-national pride. I was telling you about the fact that in Canada, first, usually we say, hey, I am from France, but now I'm Canadian. This is what we call post-national. We are people from different places. More than 20% of the population are immigrants, first generation in Canada, and it's continuing like this. It's growing and it's growing. So there's a lot of mix in cultures here, and you'll find often Canadians from second or third generation telling you, hey, I'm Irish, Indian, and also from South Africa, but I'm also Canadian. So you have to understand that this is important for you as well, because you can step from one community to another, and you can build a network through this system. Where in America, people are going to say, like I said before, I'm American first, and then my family is from Italy, for example. The last thing that is very important, as I said before, Canadians do not appreciate confrontation. They don't like it. Like French people, we like to argue, we like to disagree with other people. This is perceived as confrontational for Canadians. And what most Canadians are taught to do is not to be confrontational. So what happens when they disagree with you and they're mad at you? Well, they will probably behave in a passive aggressive way. If you don't know what it is, well, if you ever had an aunt or an uncle or even a mother-in-law that, kind of nice to you, but always mean, but not mean directly, it's indirect. It's kind of the same principle here. So they're going to tell you a comment, and there's two grids of lecture here. The first one, nothing, everything seems fine, but if you just think a little bit about it, you realize that the comment is actually a little bit mean to you. And that's how they're going to let you know that you crossed the line. Of course, I'm speaking here in a general way. It doesn't apply to everybody. It's just something that we see at a society level. So don't take it personally. We'll see how we can manage that after also. Continuing here, we're going to go now in the work area, and you'll see that I've divided this into two main work environment. First, we have the offices, headquarters, management, so anything that is in an office usually and not in direct contact with clients. In those environments, what we usually prefer is, as values, is agility and deadline compliances. That means that when you work, if you have a lot of work, well, we can expect of you that you're going to stay a little bit more at work just to make sure that you're complying with the deadline. And when you don't have that much work, or most of the time in most companies, they're going to be flexible with it. And if you want to go home earlier, that's possible. What you need to understand also is deadline compliance doesn't just mean that you have to do the job by the date. No. What it means is you need to communicate. You need to make sure that everybody knows when the work will be completed. And if for any reason there's a delay, you have to let people know. And we'll see how we're going to do that a little bit later again, because communication here is key. So another thing that is important, I just said when you're in a crunch, when you have a lot of work, it's okay to stay a little bit longer at work. But if you come from a country like Japan or France, where the culture is at work, the more you stay at work and the more, I would say, the better your boss sees you as someone that is involved in the company, This is not the case in Canada. You might find this in small organizations, but in most organizations in Canada, if you stay after your contractual working hours, you will not be perceived as someone that is productive or dedicated to the company, but as someone that is not organized, someone that is not able to do their work in time. So be careful with this. If you start at 9, start at 9. Start even 15 minutes before that. If you have to finish by 5, you have to be done by 5. If you're not able to complete your work on time, ask for help, ask for support, ask for your manager. Okay, I'm struggling to finish on time. This is where I struggle. This is the thing I think I can maybe do in a different way to save time. Or is it possible maybe to give this task to somebody else because it doesn't seem to fit within my assignment? Communication is key, and always try to provide a constructive solution. This will help you. Then, clear and concise communication. In a lot of countries, Japan, India, for example, we like to contextualize. We like to justify our answers. So we provide a lot of information, way too much for Canadian and North Americans in general. What we have to do here is we have to make short sentences, very short, and we have to keep just one idea per sentence. That's it. The reason is, if you want to communicate in English and in Canada, and English is not your mother tongue, or you don't have the right cultural references, you will struggle to get your point across. You will struggle to communicate the most important information. So one example, as a recruiter, usually, when I interact with candidates from India and I ask them, hey, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? I know this is bad of me. This is a tricky question. And the right answer, I will give it in a moment, but usually my candidates are going to say, hey, well, I started in this high school, I got this diploma, and then I decided to go to university and blah, 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 blah. And they will speak for 15 minutes straight. This is a mistake because I am not receiving the most important information. When I say as a recruiter, hey, tell me a little bit about yourself, and this is true for most recruiters. I apologize in advance, people, but you have to know that we don't really care about where you went to study. What we care about is what skills and experience you have that will apply to the job that we offer. Once you understand that, you have to really, really make sure that your communication is clear and concise and explain, well, you're looking for an accountant. I have 15 years of experience as an accountant in 2 different countries, and now I'm looking to apply this in your company as I work in the same domain back in India. Done. Perfect. That's it. So we'll see that this is something that you're going to need to practice because this is something core. This is something vital for you in Canada. Another thing that is important here is to be dynamic, to be constructive. Dynamic means that if you have energy, show it to people. If you can smile, please do. That will make people much more comfortable to engage and speak with you. I know that in many cultures, we prefer to speak in a serious way. We think it's more professional. We prefer to speak in a very monotone voice, as French people do. And we think that this is the definition of somebody that will be heard by others. This is not true in Canada. In Canada, as you can see, you have to show a little bit more passion. You have to interact with people. You have to show them that you actually care about something here. I know this might not be the love of your life, but it's important just to be able to communicate, culturally speaking, at the same level. And constructive means avoid criticism. We'll see then this again after. Focus on what can be done to achieve the goal, not what is stopping you. Of course, we have to understand what is stopping you, but we have to understand how we can circumvent or resolve this issue. And you are going to play a key role for that. We have to respect the ethics and informal hierarchy. Yes, that's a good one. In a lot of cultures, we tend to be extremely formal. We're going to say, oh, yes, hello, Mr. Hello, sir. Hello, this is the director. This is the manager. Oh, Mr. President. Yes, hi, how are you? In Canada, we don't do this. In very few domains, for example, in the academical domain, we're going to do this. But everybody else, we're not going to have a director. We're going to have John. We're not going to have a president. We're going to have Stephanie, etc. We're not going to have a manager. We're going to have Mohammed. And so what you need to understand here is when you're in a meeting or when you exchange over an email on the phone, you don't need to be formal. If you're formal, you're going to create an invisible distance with the person you're speaking to, especially if they're Canadian, and they're going to be uncomfortable with it. Creating distance with people here is not respectful. What you need to understand is you have to be polite and professional, but not formal. I know that's a stretch. We're going to get there. But an example here is if you're in a meeting, instead of saying, well, I have an idea, but I would like to run it by you, Mr. The Sir Director or Mr. President or Madam Manager, whatever. No, you're going to say, John, I have an idea. I would like to run it with you. And Stephanie, please let us know if that's okay with you. Mohammed already agreed to it. And that's it. You're polite and friendly at the same time. And there's no distance. So we make sure that we can exchange at the same level. Finally, there's something that is important in this specific here type of work environment is the fact that there's two types of meetings. We're going to have presentation meetings. Those ones are specials because here the objective is to present you something. And we just want to know if you understand what is presented. That's it. So if we present you a new way to archive the documents, we just want to know if you understand it. There's no point arguing whether or not it's better than the old one because it's just here to present it to you. Where the difference is with the work meeting. Work meeting is usually you gather with people and you're like, okay, we have a new project. How do we set up this? Or we have a problem. How do we fix this? And there, you're going to exchange with people. You might agree, you might disagree, but you're going to do it in a very respectful way. An example, back in France, in meetings, I would hear people say, well, Jean-Luc, your idea will never work, but this is stupid. We cannot do like this. And this would be very respectful. But you do this in Canada, good luck. You might not have a job at the end of the day. So what you need to understand here is how are you going to say the same thing? You're going to say, Jean-Luc, thank you for sharing that. And I like your idea, especially this point and this point. However, I think we should be more careful about that point, and we should find a workaround this. This is how I politely say, I disagree with some parts of your idea. The rest we can work with. And you will find this all along your career because it's all about compromises. Remember, that's one of the first things we saw. All right, I'm done with that. We're continuing. Now, second, work environment. Factories, supermarkets, unionized environment, any environment where we produce something or we're in contact with clients. This is a little bit different because most companies in those environments are what we call the seniority based, which means that in the offices, headquarters, and management, the white collars, we usually get promoted or we get a raise because of our performance. Where in what we're going to call them the blue collars and the unionized factories, it's about when you started in the company. So if you were the first person to you have the, I would say, the longest seniority. There you go. You're the first one to pick everything. Your vacation shift, your work shift, or if you will be first to be eligible for a promotion. If you're the last one to enter the company, you'll be the last one to choose anything. That's how it worked. This is not fair or unfair. This is the way they found to structure the growth and the evolution of people in those specific jobs. The respect, there's a few key things that you need to know about those environments. And the three values here are respect, safety, punctuality. You need to be punctual. Being punctual means if you have to start working at 8 a.m., be there 15 minutes before in order to gear up and do whatever you need to before starting working. You do not arrive at 8 a.m. and start working at 8:15 or 8:30. The reason is most of the time in those work environments, there are hazards. There's a danger component here, and you have to be careful about it, because if you are replacing a work team that has worked 8 hours during the night, they're going to be tired and they just want one thing, it's go home. And if you arrive late, you increases the chances for them to get hurt at work. That's not a good thing. So just be careful about this. There's also different contacts for different issues. If you have an issue with your pay, you're probably going to talk to the accountant of the company. And if it doesn't work, you're going to speak with the manager. And if both refuses to do anything about your pay, you're going to speak with the union representative. And if it doesn't work, then we're going to take it to court. I'll explain that in a second. If you have a problem with safety or quality, you're usually going to go see the quality and safety specialist, etc., etc. And if you don't know to who you can talk about your issues, go see the union rep, because usually that person knows where you have to go afterwards. I was talking about the unions here because it's very important to understand how also it works in Canada. And the way it does is, if there's a union in the company and your job is unionized, you will have to pay a union card and a union fee every month. This fee is usually between 1% to 4% of your salary. And you're going to tell me, okay, that's nice, but what am I paying exactly? What you're paying is the union to defend you, to represent you in front of the employer on multiple occasions. And you'll see that usually when there's a union in a company, the salary are higher than in a company that doesn't have that. So there's this advantage. The other one is, if for any reason you have a problem with the employer and the employer doesn't want to budge, the union will represent you. They will actually make a formal complaint in front of a judge. And you might not know that, but it's very expensive to go in front of a judge for something like this. It costs between $5,000 to $20,000 a day. And because you're protected by the union, you won't have to spend $1, nothing. The union will cover those fees. And usually the employers don't want to spend that money. They will prefer to settle. So good for you to know. If you have any questions, please let me know. All right, we are half an hour in it. We're going to continue here. I'm just going to take a breather. Do we have any questions? Do we have any comments? Just making sure here if everything is okay. Looks like it. All right, perfect.
Feel free, everyone, to if you have a question and you need a little more specification when we're on a certain subject, please ask Thomas. He's the expert and here to help you.
Yes, please torture me. Ask me difficult questions. I actually love that. It's a good challenge. So let's continue in the meantime. We talked about the different work environments, of course, in a general way, but just to give you a hint about what's going on. Now we're going to talk about the employer expectations. Yeah, that's also a different thing here. So in the skills to develop, and okay, thank you, Azam. Great, love it. The skills to develop, as I said before, communication, clear, concise, small. The trick for you, I strongly advise really to do that, is if you need to say something to someone, try to think, okay, if this person has to remember one thing, what is it? What's the most important thing I want to say? Just focus on that. That's it. You'll see, it makes wonders and it's going to make your life easier. So the employers, on top of communications, they like autonomy. So that means that once you're trained and you confirm that you're comfortable with your job, they expect you to know how to do your job. That's simple as that. In some cases, you're gonna have some micromanaging managers. Yes, it still happens, but more and more we see that employers, especially in Canada, they leave more autonomy to their workers than in other cultures. They also like teamwork Be careful about this because the definition of teamwork in Canada is slightly different than what you can find in other countries. Teamwork here is not, sorry, I'm struggling with my sleeves, but we'll succeed in the end. What you need to understand is in some countries, we're going to have first the group. So the team is first, the team is the most important. And after that, you're going to have each and every worker. In Canada, that's the opposite. First, we have the individual, and then we have different individuals teaming up together in order to perform a work. What does it mean exactly for you? It means that each and everyone will prioritize their personal, professional objective first, and then the one from the team. This might seem counterintuitive, but so far it works. So you have to understand this. When you work with people, understand what are your responsibilities in your job, but also to the team. Who impacts your job and who are you impacting with your job, with your work? This way, you will know with who you can speak in order to fix something or to prevent an issue later on. And this is teamwork in Canada. So once you know that, once you know exactly who does what and how it impacts you, you'll be much more performant than most people. That's a trade secret. There you go. Performance. Oh, this one is a tricky one. It is not because you work well that you will be rewarded. It doesn't work this way. It will never work this way. The way it works is if you're given an assignment by your manager, keep communicating with your manager along the way so they know the progress you're making and when you're done. And this is important because if you are seen, if you're visible from them, they will know if you're performant or not. There's nothing worse, nothing more frustrating for someone than doing their job, expecting to be recognized for it, but nobody is there to actually recognize them because everybody is busy doing something else. So don't wait for people. Just interact with them. This will help you develop your network, find a mentor, and also make sure that you can progress in your career, right? Because people will see your progress and your performance. Then, punctuality and schedule. I talked about it. Just remember, if you want to be punctual, be 15 minutes in advance. That's better for you. Understand the norms and positive interactions. Again, dynamic, constructive. That's very important for employers. You'll see that when you're in a meeting, nobody uses negative sentences or negative words. They're not going to say, well, this is not working, or, oh, we're going to be late. What they're going to say is, well, we're having a challenge with this particular task, but we hope to fix it by next week. This is the difference. So it's kind of a, Nova language here, but make sure when you talk to people, especially Canadians in a work environment, do not use negative sentences. This will work against you otherwise. So, and the final one, remote work. It will happen, not everywhere, but Canadians are by far the world champions. Uh, we all wish in hockey from time to time, that's true, but it's mostly in remote work. Bosses, I'm going to find my words again, employers are completely, most of the time, they're comfortable with that. It's kind of going out of trend right now, but you'll see it's always there. It has been there for more than 15 years in Canada and will continue. So, tiny trick for you, if you get a job and you have to work remotely 100% of the time, ask the recruiter when you sign the offer the name of the people you're going to work with and the name of the people that you should know in the company. This will help you develop your network right away, and this will help you to feel much more in control and safe when you onboard in the company. All right, let's continue here. So, oh my God, some tensions, maybe it can happen. It's a classic. So, let me give you an example. 15 years ago, my God, that's a long time. I was in a very tiny company, and one of the bosses asked me to come in, and she's like, "Hey, Thomas, how are you? It's nice. You've been with us for 2 weeks. Everything is great. Everybody's happy with your work. No, that's really nice. I just wanted to let you know I've seen in one of the emails that you sent, you've actually also sent it to one of our clients. Uh, I'm sure it's a mistake and you're going to be fine, but I just wanted to let you know that this kind of email are sensitive and confidential. So please make sure to, proofread next time. In the meantime, I hope everything is okay on your end. And you know what? Let's book a time next week. Just making sure everything is good. This tiny example I just gave you, it was actually a warning. It's called the sandwich method, where we're going to give you a nice piece of something nice just to calm you down, to say everything is fine. Then we're going to give it, it's the bread. Then the meat inside is actually the thing you need to correct. This is something you did that was wrong. And after that, because we don't want to leave you on something bad or negative, we're going to, put a little caution here so you feel okay. And how many times I've seen people coming to me and saying, "Hey, Thomas, I don't understand. I was in this company, everything was great, and the next day they fired me." Yes, it's because you didn't realize they were actually not satisfied with your work. Remember that Canadians do not like confrontation. So they will send you a message, but it will be stuffed between positive things. So it doesn't appear as confrontational. So when you're with your boss and they're telling you something, listen actively and try to understand if they're giving you an advice or if they're telling you you've done something wrong and you need to do something about it. So the very first thing you need to understand about that, yes, it's listening, but the second one, which is equally important, is do not apologize. Do not spend your time apologizing. If you made a mistake where the company lost money, yes, apologize. This is a big mistake. But 99% of the time, especially newcomers, when they apologize, it's for something that is not a mistake. It's okay to make tiny mistakes. It's fine. It's part of the game. If you don't speak proper English, that's fine. Don't apologize for it. If you think you behaved in a way that could be seen as rude, don't apologize for it because you didn't do it on purpose. So if somebody says, "Hey, Thomas, I've seen in your last email there's a typo," I'm not going to say, "Oh, I'm sorry about that. I won't do it again, never. It's okay, I promise." No, I'm going to say, "Thank you very much for letting me know. I will correct that." The reason why I'm telling you this is because when there's tension, people don't want excuses. People, especially in Canada, they don't want to know how sorry you are. What they want to know, they want to be reassured that first you understood what is the issue and also how you're going to fix it. So we're coming to my third point here. If I struggle with something and they're giving me a sandwich, I can go different ways. I can say, for example, you know what, thank you for letting me know. And actually, I'm struggling a little bit with this particular process. Can we book, 15, 20 minutes to review it one last time? Or if you don't have time, can anybody else help me with this? And I'm telling you this because I've learned it the hard way as well. It's better to look like an idiot for the first month in the company and learn things and then become the expert and be comfortable in your job than look like you're fine the first month and then not be able to do the most basic things that are required in your job and be fired. So play the idiot, learn, look at what's going on, and apologize only if you made a big mistake. And you will see that suddenly it's going to be much better for you, especially because Canadians do not appreciate and they do not trust someone that apologizes all the time. And you can see it even for yourself. If you have somebody next to you that's always like, oh, sorry, I wanted to say, oh, no, sorry for saying sorry. You're not going to trust this person. You're not going to say, I want to work with this person. This person seems trustful. No, you have to show that you're in control. You have to show that you can learn and you can grow. And this comes by being able to explain what's going on and how you can fix things. All right. And last thing here, always seek a compromise. If you're not able to deliver the job that is expected, try to think about how you can achieve that And if this needs a compromise, if you need to spread the work, if you need a little bit more to ask for it, if you don't ask, you don't get. And you'll see, and it's going to be a surprise for you, how flexible Canadians can be when it comes to work. Because what they want is they want to understand what's going on. If you do that, most people are going to be fine with you taking an extra time just to do your job. All right, let's continue. We're going to talk about small talk. Yay! This is awkward. Honestly, for me and most people outside of Canada, sorry, Joel, but I have to tell you, small talk is very awkward. So, what is it exactly? Small talk is a way for you, it's actually a weapon. It's a secret weapon that is used to develop your network. If you're in an elevator with somebody else and you have this awkward silence going up, if you are at the coffee machine waiting for your turn and again, awkward silence, then you can use the small talk because this is a way for you to get to know people inside the company and develop professional relationship with them. And I will tell you why after that. It's very nice. But first, let's see how we can address that. Small talk is usually it's a positive conversation. We're not looking to criticize things. We're looking to discover who's the person that we're working with or that is working in the same company as us. This conversation has to be simple, concise, and inclusive. What does what this means? Excellent question. Well, it's simple. If, let's say, Joel and I were in an elevator and I don't know Joel, but we're working together, we're in the same company, what I'm going to do is, hi, I'm Thomas. And Joel will be like, hey, I'm Joel. Nice to meet you. Okay, cool. And then I'm just going to ask a few questions. Oh, in what department are you working? Have you been working here for a long time? Oh, nice. Ding, the door opens, conversation is done, and you just say, well, it was nice to meet you. Hope to see you soon. The principle of this is when you start in a company, since you know nobody, it's good to find people to talk to because the small talk will help you understand what's going on in the company. I've been relying on this for years now, almost a decade, and this helped me to understand when there was a potential uh, professional move for me, an opportunity for a promotion, I would be one of the first to know because even before it was official, I would know. If I made a mistake, I could hear from that. If I'm new in town, learning where are the good spots to go to hang out on weekends or at night, I would use it as well. And also to build a reputation within the company. For example, for the past 7 years, my God, 7 years in my current company, I'm known as the recruiter that is also an advocate for diversity and international hires. So whenever a manager, director, potential client had a question about diversity and how they could actually create a program to hire specifically people from abroad, newcomers or francophones, they would come to me. And this was only possible because I was talking to other people and they knew that this was one of my passions. So the small talk here, and just be mindful here. The small talk, it's not you bragging about how incredible you are. It's never about that. It's about you trying to understand who's the person in front of you. And you have to keep it small. You have to keep it casual and short and nice. That's it. So if you're a little bit dry on this and you don't know how to approach people, what type of questions you can ask, the first, like I said, is identify where they work. Try to understand also what type of personal activities they do on the weekend. You can also talk about their hobbies or TV shows, whatever. There's also two exceptions I'd like to mention here, but please use them as little as possible. If you like to complain, like me, you can use two subjects, traffic and weather, but you can only use one sentence and say, ah, the traffic was awful this morning. Oh, yeah, you're right. Okay, you're done complaining. Now you have to talk about something positive. So the small talk, again, it's very interesting and it's only to get to know people around you. And again, in a very short amount of time, 1 to 5 minutes, okay? Don't hold the leg of the person here. It's just a very short interaction. So uh, a few things that now we need to address. the unspoken rules and the taboos. You'll see that every culture has their taboos. Like, for example, in France, we don't talk about money. Here, you have to avoid a certain number of things. For example, avoid divisive topics. There's right now, for example, the US politics. That's a great subject to avoid. Do not talk about it, especially at work. Sensitive discussions, they're not necessary. Avoid them at all costs, especially when you start in the company. When you start, you have no reputation, nobody knows you. And so what's going to happen is if you speak and if you say something that makes somebody uncomfortable, they will only see that after that. That's the only feeling they will have when they see you. And you don't want this. So you have to start neutral. You have to get to know people. You have to let them know you as well. And after that, once you build a little bit of trust, if you really want to talk about that type of topics with them, make sure to set some rules so it doesn't impact your work after that and your reputation at work. If you are caught in a trap, and there's a group waiting by the coffee machine and they say, "Hey, Thomas, what's up? What do you think about the election of Trump?" The only thing to do is you grab your coffee, you say, "You know what? It's too early for me to talk about a subject like this," and you go back to work. Avoid issues. Simple as this. The other thing also, always speak in a positive or neutral manner. This is also very important to help people feel comfortable interacting with you at the beginning. I know, especially, for example, if you come from Eastern Europe, you might not be used to smile to people when you arrive at home at work or to talk about positive things right away. Maybe you're going to behave a certain way, a different way. I know that, for example, French, Italians, we like to tease people when we arrive. So this is very aggressive for Canadian people. Don't do that, please. So what we're going to see here, what are the taboos underneath that? First, understand that we do not compare. Never. There's nothing worse than you inviting someone at your home and this person is like, "Oh, yeah, nice decoration, but it's prettier in my home." Or when they taste your food, they're gonna be like, "Yeah, but my grandma's actually makes a better dish." You don't want that. And I know we all have this reflex where you're like, "It's actually this is better in my home country. This is not good here." But don't do it. Okay? Look for the positive. And when you share with people, when they ask, "Hey, how's Canada? So how do you find New Brunswick?" Share the positive things. Okay? Try to create a relationship. And you will only do it if you make people feel comfortable and if you actually speak with them to get to know them or to show what you appreciate about where you are living now and the actual point where you're living here in Canada. Like I said before, avoid confrontation. I know sometimes you might, get annoyed or frustrated. In that case, just say, just let them know, "Hey, I'm sorry, I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable about this subject. Is it possible maybe to talk about it another time?" Or, just because I want to be able to talk about it when I'm feeling better. Just letting people know this will put a stop to the conversation in a neutral way, and that's going to be better for you. Trust me. No, humor and philosophy are two things to avoid at work, at least at first. They're not really in the culture. And humor is something that is very culturally sensitive. So avoid it at first. Once you get to know people, you'll be able to make jokes if you really like this, but just be careful at first. Avoid any remarks or anything that can actually polarize people. Again, that goes back to divisive topics, but it's very important. If you like something, good for you. But don't make a case for it. Don't try to defend it. If you want to say, just say, "Hey, I actually like this. Oh, me, I prefer this. Oh, okay, cool. Done." No battle, no argument, no confrontation. No comments on what people look like. I know sometimes like, "Oh my God, your dress is so nice." But if it's a man saying it to a woman, there's a risk of this being perceived as harassment. And harassment is something, it's a big subject in North America, and you have to understand that we have uh, moral harassment, we have sexual harassment, and you have to understand why this is in place. It's to protect everybody from a misunderstanding. So my rule of thumb here for you guys and women as well, ladies, it's very simple. If it touches the skin, don't make a comment about it. That's it. You can comment and say, oh, that's a pretty bag, but don't comment the dress or the pants or whatever. Don't do that. And you'll be safe. You'll be fine. Also, avoid romance if possible, because romance is culturally the art, the subtle art of seduction is also very different from one country to another. Please avoid that if possible. All right, what do we have? In case of problem, because this will happen. I am telling you, we are all bound to make mistakes. It happens. So what you need to do, first thing is when you talk to people, and this is very important, you're going to see at first they're going to be nice and smiley. Hey, I'm Thomas, nice to meet you. And if you say something they disagree with or that's making them uncomfortable, they're usually going to stop smiling. They might be a little bit more tense on their seat, or the way they're standing. In that case, there's different options, but usually what I recommend is de-escalate right away the situation. Do not apologize, because that would actually say that you made a mistake. But just if you see that the person is reacting, you can say, oh, I feel like I said something that maybe makes you uncomfortable. That wasn't my objective. I just wanted to share with you, and I hope it's okay with you. You know what? Let's change subjects, and then you say something else. And it's important to end your conversation on a different topic, on a more positive note, because even your first impression is very important. Your last impression is even more important. It makes the difference between, oh yeah, I met Thomas. Yeah, he seems to be a nice guy, but he's a little bit special. Huh? That's if I don't change my subject. And usually, if I'm able to change to a nicer subject in the end, they're gonna say, Thomas, yeah, I met him. Yeah, he's strong-minded, but he seems okay. And this is the difference. This is what you're gonna have to train. I know you might feel, oh, how am I gonna do this? Like Thomas is nice, but how do we actually do that? Don't worry, I have a few links for you. The thing is, you're gonna have to practice. You're gonna have to interact with people, and you're gonna need a few a few icebreakers to start, but then you're gonna be fine. And remember, don't try to extend the conversation. First, just try a tiny interaction of 30, 60 seconds. That's it. And then over time, you repeat, you get more comfortable, you develop the relationship, and then bam, you have somebody new in your network that can help you improve your career or get a new job. All right. So, good habits and tools. So far, I think we're going to be on time, Joel. We're going to have plenty of time to exchange. That's nice. Good habits. One of them, I love it. It's the first one. It's instant step back. There's an expression in French, and I want you to take it literally, please, because it saved me multiple times. And it goes as follows. If you want to say something, twist your tongue 7 times before. Try it. You'll see. It's not easy. Usually your tongue's going to be tired after that. So why do I say that? It's because most of the time when we exchange with people, we get excited and we want to say more. And sometimes we say too much. And the idea here is first, we need to listen. We need to understand what people like, what people want or need, and then we ask them questions to get to know them better. Because the more you know about them, the more information you get, the more power, the more control you have over the situation. And so you can take better decisions afterward. So if everybody shares their weekend plan and everybody's awesome and you're like, oh yeah, me too, I want to share. Think twice, because when you just start in the company, you might not be as comfortable in English. You might not be as, you don't already have the reputation or the trust bond with those people. So think about yourself and say, should I actually say something? Or should I just tell them, you know what? That's really nice. this is a really great idea. Be nice with them. And this will give you an instant good karma with them because they're going to be like, wow, Thomas is really nice with me because you're not trying to be better than them. You're just highlighting the good things. And that's good for you because people will like you. This is a very basic formula for people liking you at the office. That's it. Then, of course, they're going to ask you. If people ask you the question, answer. But just avoid oversharing. If we don't ask, usually don't tell. And maybe 6 months down the road, when you're comfortable, you can start doing it. Again, speak, but don't share too much. Keep contributions brief. The reason for that is that you're going to find people, it's going to be very frustrating for you because there's people, they're amazing. They speak very fast and very well. They're using fancy words in English, and you probably want to do the same. I'm telling you right away, don't. Because first of all, you might not be as comfortable as them. And second of all, this is very intimidating for anybody. There's so many studies that shows that in a work environment, the person that others listen the most is not the one with the fancy words and that speaks very fast. It's actually the one that speaks less. If you speak with just a few words and slowly for just say one or two sentences, people will listen to you more because if you usually don't speak, this is very this is a neurological reaction actually from the brain. And probably you've had that. You're in your bed, it's it's night, it's dark, and you hear a noise that you're not familiar with. And suddenly, even if you are very tired, your brain wakes up instantly and you're like, "Ah, what is it?" It does exactly the same thing if you take this habit of not speaking often, but usually speaking in a simple and efficient way. People will pay attention to you. All right. Then you have to find a mentor, ideally, because this person will help you shape your career, but also your behavior in order to be eligible for promotions and the things you actually want in your career. It's not perfect. Be careful. This is not a magic trick. Okay. You need multiple mentors at multiple stages of your career in order to evolve. Simply as that. Smile. Speak in a simple, diplomatic way. Precise language, but simple language. Again, if you are a newcomer, there's probably other newcomers in the company. And if you speak in a simple way, everybody will understand you 100%. If you use fancy language, maybe half will understand you. The other ones will be afraid to say, I don't understand. So avoid that. And also, if you are in a situation where you don't understand somebody, please let them know. Tell them, hey, uh, I'm sure what you just said was important, and I want to understand. Can you maybe use a different way to say it? Can you use a more simplistic way to say it? I know it might feel a little bit hurtful for your ego to do that, but you'll see that everybody will be thankful to you for doing this. And then you have to learn to provide constructive feedback. This is harder for French people. For everybody else, hopefully you're going to be much easier. It's just to make sure that when people ask you a feedback, look at what they can improve, but again, from a positive standpoint. And I will share with you the few tools here that we have. Glassdoor, it's great to understand what's going on in a company and also everything around what people expect and the compensation that you can expect for your job. Then if you want to know how to speak in a more corporate way, I put a little bit of a few influencers that I particularly like, and they're pretty good. It's in English, so you should be fine. Then we have DeepL, which is a great translator. It's free. Please use it, much better than Google Translation. Wikipedia, in case people are talking about very Canadian, a cultural reference from the 90s, the Canadian TV or whatever, and you don't know what it is, look at Wikipedia. Honestly, in 5 minutes, you'll understand what it is, and you can, after that, interact with them. And also, I put a little list of icebreakers you can use at work to get to know people. Voila. I think or it? Yes, great. So do we have any questions? Do we have any comments? And remember, all questions are welcome. And whatever it is that you think is difficult, we can find an easy way for you to do it.
Thank you, Thomas. And I will stop the recording now, so that we can have question answered and so nobody is more shy.